Hi everyone, and welcome to our January edition of Meet the Creator Picture Book. And I've got a beautiful book to talk to you about today, and I'm very thrilled to be interviewing Fátima Ordinola about her wonderful debut picture book, Our Love. So welcome, Fátima. It's so lovely to meet you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here and talk about the book. It's lovely to meet you too.
We are definitely the luckiest ones. So are you happy to read the book out for us? That would be absolutely wonderful.
Yes, I have it right here.
Lovely.
Okay, I'm gonna read it. Our Love. Our love is bigger than any river. It can climb higher than any tree. Our love is sweeter than any breakfast, and blooms brighter than any flower. Our love can reach any distance. It travels with me on every journey. Our love warms me on the coldest of days, and calms me like a gentle summer breeze. Our love is stronger than any shield. It protects me wherever I go. Our love guides me through long, dark times. It is patient and kind, no matter how slowly I go. Our love is everything, because our love is everywhere.
Thank you. That spread at the end is just stunning. So this is the first picture book you've had published in the UK. What was it inspired by?
It was inspired by different things. I remember when I was researching for this project, because I studied the MA in Children's Book Illustration at Cambridge School of Art, and we do a picture book project in every module. So in one of the modules, I went to visit my cousin to Madrid, and for the holidays for Christmas. And I remember I was feeling very homesick, missing my family from Peru, and I was remembering everything that we used to do together. So I felt like a bit sad and lonely at that time, but that I used that as an inspiration. So I went to the movies and I watched After Sun, directed by Charlotte Wells, and the movie is about the relationship from a parent with children. And I love that dynamic in the movie, like in simple things, that the relationship was very warming, and it was so beautiful. So I left the movie and I felt very excited to go to my sketchbook and start writing the things that I love to do with my family. And I came with a huge list of all the activities we used to do and I really enjoyed. So after that, I went to my class and I showed that to my teachers. And I think the theme was about love, about relationships, about activities, about small things. And after that, everything, I built that very easily because I had the narrative, I have the concept. And I wanted to work with animals because I love animals so much. And I love watching animals, how they interact with each other. And I thought that, wow, this is like a big moment for me to explore that. Yeah. I join both things, like my relationship with my family and the things that I love about animals. And the book, that's how I created. That's what inspired my book.
In which case, I mean, it's like a win-win for you, isn't it? Because it's working together, which is lovely. So, I mean, I absolutely adored your illustrations because they are that lovely, soft toned illustrations, and I felt they're very cozy illustrations. Was the feeling that I got from them. So, what's your creative process? How do you create your art?
Um, well, before the master that I did, it was completely different. I went straight to my sketchbook and draw like on sheets. But when I was doing this project, I discovered that the more artwork I produce, the more technique I practice, the more options I had to do the project. So I try printmaking techniques, I try watercolors, pencils, I try everything. And then I had all this on this table. I had all the options that I could go for the book. So I knew that how the animals look in every technique, and I chose the ink and pastels because it gives me that soft of the text that I needed. Um, but it was a very chaotic process because I had to work with every technique, and at the end I couldn't make a choice, but I have to make a choice. But it was fun. I really enjoy that process because it's just trying everything, like from collage to digital techniques. Like I just had the best time trying everything, and once I decided for one route, I developed the other pages.
Excellent. I mean, it sounds amazingly creative and good fun, as you say, to go through all those different mediums. So, with the point of view, obviously, this is going to be read a lot to younger children and hopefully, with members of their family, which I think is wonderful. What would you like them to take from the book? What sort of message would you like younger children to get from the book?
Mm, I think more like a message is like the feeling of reading it again. Like
Mhm.
I saw this illustration from Richard Scarry, where like there are three animals reading a book that it's broken with, and it's like glue with tape because it has been read so many times. And I love that picture so much. And I just want that with my book, or I just want that with every children's book. Like children want to read it every night and want to go to the zoo or go to the park and find the animal that read from the book. Um, like that kind of interaction, it's what drives me to make picture books, like to the emotion of having fun. And at the end, when they close the book, they talk about the book. So it's like a never-ending interaction between the book, the children, and the person who's reading the book.
I agree, and I think with those beloved picture books that you read with children when they're young, it kind of goes into your family language. You know what you're talking about when you do quotes from the book and things like that. And I certainly think Our Love is one that will stay with people without a doubt. What struck me was obviously we're having a huge problem with mental health in young people and children at the moment, and I think your story is great for building self-esteem and confidence and showing children that they've got those people there that will always be there for them because we're in uncertain times, and I think the story is just so warm and loving.
And also, I think there are things we can say out loud or express when we are children. Even as adults, it's very hard to say "I love you" sometimes, and that's why there are books, movies, music to express that. And I think this book does that, and I wish I wish I could like children read the book and choose a page from the book and relates to that text and can say that to the person who's reading the book. If it's a sibling, a parent, a guardian, like he can express through the book, through the story.
Yeah, helps them to verbalize those emotions, definitely.
Yeah.
So with yourself, were you inspired when you were younger by any picture books? Do any come to mind?
When I was a kid, I didn't read picture books because I didn't have any picture books nearby. I discovered picture books very late, when I was 18, 19, at a book fair, because in my house there was always alphabets, dictionaries, encyclopedias, or like illustrated books, but not picture books.
Yeah.
So I didn't grow up with picture books, and it sounds weird, but I discovered that very late. And when I discovered the picture books, I fell in love with them, and I wanted to understand how that book is made. And yeah.
And you've already mentioned Richard Scarry, which, is a favourite of many of us. Many of us love Richard Scarry. And I understand yesterday you did something very special. So can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yes, I went to Hitchin for the first time, and I paint my window for the first time. I paint a bookstore window at Next Page Books, which is a wonderful children's bookshop. And I had the best time because everything was for the first time.
Yeah.
Like putting the drawing on the window. It was very windy and rainy too. And then mixing the colors with acrylics, everything was so fun. And the window is there, so if anyone wants to go. I also left a couple of signed books, and they have like a small surprise too. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm nowhere near Hitchin, else I'd be up there straight away. Sounds wonderful. Are there any photos going to go on social media or things like that?
Yeah. I posted on my social media yesterday, and I think Next Page Books is also going to post one today, because I finished so late and it was so dark.
Yeah.
So I think they're gonna take a picture today.
Right, I will definitely go over to look at your social media later, because that sounds absolutely wonderful. I love it when I go to a bookshop and they've got the illustrated windows at the front. It's just so inviting, isn't it? It just, encourages you to come in. Well, it's been absolutely lovely talking to you this morning, Fatima. Thank you so much for coming to talk to us. I think the book is going to be loved by so many people, and I can't wait to read it with my granddaughter, because I know she's just going to adore it. That was absolutely lovely. Thank you so much, Fatima. And hopefully, we'll be able to have you back again, perhaps if you bring out another book. Okay?
Yeah, I would love to be back. Thank you. Thank you
very much. Hi everyone, and welcome to our middle grade edition of Meet the Creator for January 2025. And I have to say, guys, I'm a little bit starstruck here. I'm sitting here being very fangirl, because I'm in the very lucky position of being able to interview Patrice Lawrence today about her new middle grade book, People Like Stars. So welcome, Patrice. It's lovely to have you here with us.
Thank you so much.
Are you happy to give us a bit of a short reading, please, just to give us an idea?
Sure. So there's 3 characters in People Like Stars. It's 3 first-person stories. And I suppose the character that almost has the least at stake as well is a boy called Stanley, who's a twin. And he lives with his brother Oliver, his mum and dad, but they've got a forbidden grandma. And the reason I started with Stanley, I think when I was writing the different voices, I just really loved writing his voice, because he's like so energetic and quite funny. So I'm just going to read you a little bit of Stanley's opening chapter. So this is Stanley to start with, like, man, I know the biology. We weren't the egg split thing. We were the other one. Twins like me and Liv Love don't look alike. We're just brothers who got to join the outside world on the same day. We were even stuck to our own placentas. People don't always see it, but we're very different. I don't mean absolute proper different. I've seen those pictures. Twins like us who've got a black parent and a white parent and come out looking like someone forgot to shake up the DNA. So one of them's a white one and one of them's a black one. Strangers take sneaky snacks and they end up on TV sitting on the lap of a parent they don't match. Nah, we're not that different. Me and Oliver are both the colour of eggs. The organic ones in boxes, not the twin making ones. Kind of light pinky brown. His hair's straight than mine, but I keep mine as short as I can without school moaning to mum about it. We both had knits most of reception class and year one. Dad took us to the barber's and I liked the look, so kept it. It's simple. I don't need gel or serum or a do-rag. Oliver likes crew cut as much as he likes being called Live Love. He's more afro and twist. Every black man hair product in the bathroom is his because Dad keeps things short and easy like me. So yeah, we're pretty different, but some things happen to both of us. We're both standing by the fridge watching Dad have a milk crisis. Is Mum drinking oat in her tea now, he asks. Depends what type of tea, Oliver says. We move aside when my Dad takes out the Oatly and places it next to the 3 different cartons lined up on a counter. She likes Earl Grey with lemon, Lady Grey with oats, and PG Tips with lactose-free, Oliver tells him. So, and I just started with that, even though it doesn't say much, I just love the family dynamics of it, and I love writing about families, and that's kind of the most standard family in a way, but I just kind of wanted a bit of Stanley's voice, because he still makes me laugh.
He's a brilliant character. Brilliant character. He's so funny. So obviously you write for a wide range of ages. You know, you go from picture book all the way up to YA. But personally, I'd say that this one seems to hit kind of the 11 to 14 year demographic, which is absolutely amazing because there are so few books that do fit that sort of demographic. Are there any significant differences for you in writing for the different ages? And have you got any preference?
I don't have a preference. I think you find a story and then you think of the age of the protagonist and that kind of shapes what you write about and to some degree the market. I think the difference is in, I suppose, the message and the consequences of a story. So for me, I think every story, regardless of what age I'm writing for, should end in hope. But with obviously older teenage books, you can be more ambiguous about that. But I think the fundamental thing for me is writing stories. And because I tend to quite often write stories about children, families that are often pushed to the edges of society. Yeah. So I often think about what if a child or an adult from that section of our society was reading my book. And for me, it's like, do no harm. If I'm writing about those subjects and people who are dealing with those challenges, I want them to finish the book feeling good about themselves and feeling that hope. So for me, that's the main thing. But I think depending obviously on your word count and the the demographic that I've been marketed to, it shapes my story as well.
So People Like Stars has, of course, got strong themes of fractured families and long-held secrets, and we're not going to give any spoilers away because that's always the difficult thing, and friendship, of course, and what being a friend means. So was there anything in particular that inspired the story?
There were always things that inspired. And my head is always kind of like this casserole of ideas that like bubbling away, and so it's like, oh, that might make a book, which is obviously why I end up having so many characters because oh, I like that storyline. Oh, what about that? Oh, that one. So I start. Sen is 13, and she's lived with her mum was a young parent, 16 or so. And they've lived in lots of temporary, housing because it's so hard to find somewhere to live because, private rental is incredibly expensive. And her story was inspired by 2 things. One, by meeting a young woman who's was 17 when I met her, telling me about isolation in schools, which hadn't quite clicked with me what it was. And I remember reading actually a few years ago about a young woman who was put in isolation at her school because her parents didn't buy the uniform from an expensive uniform shop. So it's on the news, so because they bought a cheaper version, she was put in isolation. So you're put in isolation because you're not affluent. I thought education is free for all, but so that really made me, and I think a lot of people who are put in isolation who are dealing with quite a lot of other issues in their lives at the time. So speaking to my child who's now in her 20s, one of their friends was put in isolation because they were living in a refuge at the time, and there'd been issues in the family that the fact that the mother had to live in a refuge with her children. So you're trying to process this, but then some of that comes up at school and you're put in isolation. So I was cross about, about that. And also another time when I stay in London, I sometimes stay in budget hotels, which are fine, but then I realised that actually it's where that particular local authority house some of their families. So there might be a family member, usually a mother and children, living in one room, so you've got no cooking facilities, you don't know who's living in a room next to you. So that kind of vulnerability around living space was one thing. Second thing was I went to a Prima Donna festival in Suffolk a couple of years ago, and I was on a panel called Invisible Women with Joanne Harris and another author talking about how we represent women in their 50s.
Yeah.
And I kind of realised that actually I've fallen into that trap where I have very sort of warm, nurturing grandmothers, quite stereotypical, whereas both my grandmothers were terrifying. But also, I'm 57 now, and most of my friends, we still go to gigs a lot. We have tattoos. All of those things. I've watching a film yesterday, thinking, yeah, Fontaine to DC. I love Fontaine to DC. And that is actually reality for most people I know in their 50s, grandparents or not. And I'm not writing those women. So I created Vixen, who's kind of like a Vivienne Westwood type graffiti artist with like tattoos and also selfish and all of those things, because we should be allowed to be selfish. So that kind of was that. And also always living in a multi-ethnic family myself, having my biological father, his mother was Indian, and I know nothing about my Indian heritage. So there's this bit of your heritage that you don't know about, which means that who are you isn't always complete. So all those bits and pieces. And so the last thing, which is the main storyline, is Ayrton, who as a baby he was stolen.
Yeah.
For a couple of hours, somebody took him out of a shop, and he was found okay, a couple of hours later. But that was actually from listening to a true crime podcast when I was on a bus about a case I actually remembered from the 90s where a baby was taken from a maternity hospital by a woman dressed up pretending to be a health visitor. And I think it was after a couple of things happened, that maternity wards actually got much more secure with security. And so I think before anybody could just wander in, couldn't they? So
yeah.
So it's a mix of all those things.
Definitely. I can remember that happening when my daughter's grown very much grown up now, but there was a similar incident just before she was born, and I can remember being in hospital and having to keep her with me the entire time because I didn't want to go into the nursery because I'd got so freaked out about it. And believe me, the way my daughter was when she was a baby, you wouldn't have wanted to keep her with you, Patrice. I tell you. She definitely had a temper, bless her. She got bright ginger hair and started early. And what you say about Vixen, now obviously Vixen is my favourite character, without a doubt. She was my absolute favourite character, and as a woman, well, a few months off of a big birthday with a hero at the end, obviously I identified with her very much. And I wanted to ask you a bit of a cheeky question, because you know what? As I was reading Vixen, she kind of reminded me a bit of the person that had written the book.
Excellent.
You in Vixen?
I don't know. I think there's probably bits of me in all of the characters, and I just really wanted her to feel very much like an authentic woman in her 50s. I think we're sometimes tempted when we write, books that are marketed for younger audiences to focus on our younger characters. And like sometimes the older characters, and sometimes I feel, reading about parenting, they almost feel they're there just as plot devices and not in characters as themselves. So I really wanted to write her as an artist, as a bit moody. I've got tattoos as well, not around my neck. I think that'd be a bit much for my own mother. But it's those things. And I really wanted her to write. And some of that wish fulfillment as well. I'd love to have your own house and your place where you do your art and your exhibition. But I do like Vixen her slippers with pom-poms on them, so
she do. And she has got those slippers. I also like I really enjoyed the portrayal of Ayrton's mum, because that obviously her child going missing for a couple of hours has had a real effect on her. And I identified with her so much. Also identified with the problems that obviously that caused for Ayrton, because you know, his mum was super protective. But I thought that was so well done. I really
Thank
thought
you.
that relationship was well drawn. And I loved reading about all the different family dynamics. I mean, I'm so happy that you started with the sibling relationship between Stanley and Oliver, because I thought it was just so funny. It was just so
My
cute.
friend, my friend actually has identical twin boys. I mean,
Ah,
they've just turned in their early 20s now, but I've known them since they were born. So I just thought there's that kind of love and frustration.
yeah,
So
yeah.
all of those
Utter
things.
love and utter hate at times that you have with your siblings, you know. So I mean, you've partly answered this, but so with the families and their brilliant family relationships portrayed in the book, are they inspired by people around you, or do your characters come to you fully formed?
No, I think I always take out of life very much so. I think
Yeah,
when I do school events, I always say that I was always that child who would always ask why, why, and I'm actually still that adult. It doesn't actually make you any more popular, does it really? But I just kind of I love to know how things work, and because I've never grown up in a traditional family, you know, for the first 4 years I was privately fostered, and then lived with my. And if people don't know what that is, it was quite a sort of common arrangement, particularly around West African families actually, where a child would be looked after by usually a white working class family, and they would live there where the families either worked or. And because of my mother, she met my father in Sussex. They're both training to be nurses, and they were quite young, like early 20s. Had neither had family in the UK. And then when my mum became pregnant, rather belatedly, my father decided he didn't want to be a father. So she's kind of left by herself with no family, hadn't finished training to be a nurse yet. So she organised from the age of 4 months to 4 years. I'd looked after by Auntie Phyllis in Whitehawk in Brighton. And then when I moved in with my mum had met my stepdad, who's Italian, and then they had my two brothers. So I've kind of never lived either as an adult or a child in a very traditional family. And as much as I'd like to think I am not unique, so there's lots of people who live in all types of families. So I love exploring those family dynamics. So I kind of always knew that Stanley and Oliver would live with their mum and dad, and I'd be a really loving family, which would kind of make the fact that a grandmother has been kind of excommunicated from his family a bit more of a surprise. And for a while my mother was a lone parent as well, and I've been a lone parent, so I kind of want to show those lone parents
yeah,
relationships as well, and how tough it can be sometimes. So both of those, I think I kind of know. Weirdly, when I start writing a young character, I instantly know their family situation,
mm,
but a lot of it's drawn from real life friendships, and also for many years I worked in a voluntary sector. So I met children who were affected by family imprisonment, care experienced young people. So there are so many stories. You kind of want to humanise them. Well, I do in my books as well.
yeah. So you are, of course, at the moment, Book Trust writer in residence this year. Can you tell us a bit more about that, and how's it going?
Yeah, it's for 6 months, so it finishes at the end of next month. And what they asked me to do is have a focus on reading for pleasure for children facing challenging circumstances, which kind of dovetails both in what I write and my previous work that I've done
Mm-hmm.
in the charity sector, which was around children's rights, also early years, equality, all of those things. It's something I'm incredibly passionate about, and kind of frustrates me and angers me that, from such a young age, children's opportunities are so different. And I
Yeah,
remember even seeing it in my child's own school, because we lived in quite a poor area of London, that, my child started school already reading, just because I love reading, and I'd read to them. And, from the age of 4, we'd go to get on a bus and go to the Tate Modern and meander around, had all that social cultural capital. But this is almost like preschool age. So many things are set, so many children are facing so many other challenges. So it was really, it's a couple of things really. So I've written and recorded some videos about particularly picture books, how we can use them to explore quite difficult subjects around grief and loss and other things. Books that look at change and transition, because children are in constant change. From the moment you're born, you're absorbing all of these things around you. But for some children, again, if you're not housed securely, if if you feel unsafe in your home environment, all of these things, if you're affected by war, all these things will impact on you. So how can we support children to articulate that if they want to, or to see themselves as a hero, or to encourage other children to empathise with those sort of situations. And then I also wrote one article, quite a personal article, about children being valued, about the impact of books when I was growing up. And I was a massive reader, because my mum is and my biological dad is as well. And but growing up in the sort of 70s and 80s, any books that have black characters were terrible, terrible stereotypes, are really, really awful. But that was also the nature of the world. So if you looked at some of the sitcoms that were on at that time, you had a black and white minstrel show, which didn't end until 78. So it's on for 20 years. So, white men wearing blackface, dancing, which was actually the Saturday tea time show for my childhood. So that was the world around you that told me as a black child that I was worth less than white people, and that was kind of ingrained in everything. And I think what books can do is they can change that from a very, very early age. They can counter those stereotypes. It can make all children feel that they are valued and important. So for me, that's an incredibly important, and it also isn't just around race. It is all those children that live in poverty and so they're not valued because their families might have to use food banks or can't afford the expensive school uniform, all of those things. I think books can counter that. So that was kind of my message about how we use books and reading for pleasure to make children, to not damage children, but also make children feel absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. Which you are the perfect person to do. It's got to be said, you are the perfect person to do. Now, I'm afraid we've run out of time, and I could sit here chatting to you for the rest of the day, Patrice. But
and there was no cat. There was no cat.
No, we didn't have any cats jumping up, which is amazing. That was absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. Loved the book. Absolutely loved the book.
Thank you.
And of course, as always, looking forward to whatever you write next.
Thank you so much. Thank you.